All right, so let's go today. Let's get going on today's class. So it's good to see it's good to see everybody back after the snow week, which seems like a distant memory right now. But anyways, this is what we were going to cover last week. So on that, in that regard, make sure that you have updated the syllabus to the new post-snowpocalypse syllabus that was updated in Canvas. We didn't actually have to move many things in this course because of the nature of the course, but there are some dates that changed, including the IRB protocols. So just to kind of remind you of where our final destination is, what we're trying to accomplish with this, we do want to make sure that we are contributing to psychology, that we're doing an experiment that increases the knowledge of psychology. So once again, it's a good idea to keep that goal in mind, especially as you're working through some of the nitty-gritty of your IRB protocols. So keep the undergraduate research conference in mind. This is going to be one of the places where you will have your best opportunity to make your findings go public and to actually put it out there into the world. And we will prep you in this course for presenting at the undergraduate research conference. And my previous advanced lab students, 4 of them are shown here. Kind of proud. They made the front page of the preface during their session. So keep that in mind. This course really is about contributing something to psychology, increasing the knowledge. And in order to do that, we really have to get this out to people and get it out to the public. So keep that in mind as a sort of end goal as we're working on our projects. In terms of what we're going to be covering today, this is going to be specifically IRB protocol, and that also feeds into your method section. So once you're done your IRB protocol, you will be like 2 steps away from writing your method section because we need to determine everything that we're doing. And then the method section is just a recipe for what we're going to be doing. So what we want to do today is I will kind of briefly just go over the stock IRB responses that I uploaded to Canvas. So we have the compensation table. We have certain stock responses that are strategies that you can use in your study to make sure that it is adhering to what the IRB is looking for. And then we're going to just have an open question session where you can ask any kind of questions that you have about finalizing your IRB protocol. All right, so a couple of things that I just want to make sure that we're all aware of. We'll start off with the simplest one, which is the compensation table. So one of the things that the IRB protocol is going to ask you for is your compensation for that'll do. One of the things the IRB will ask you for is your compensation for participation in the study. So what is your subject going to get for participating in this study? Now, some of your subjects, especially if you're recruiting from family and friends, are going to get nothing. And you will say in your IRB, they will not receive any compensation for participating in this experiment. That is completely legitimate. And they will have in their subject information sheet under compensation, there is no compensation for participating in this study. So that's the low end of the compensation scale, that you get nothing. In order that this is not coercive, the compensation needs to be reasonable. So if you were financially independent to the point where you could offer students $1,000 for participating in your study, that would not be approved by the IRB because $1,000 is too coercive. It's just too much. It will take away their freedom to withdraw and their ability to say, no, I don't want to do this study. So what what we've done for our introductory psych students and for other courses that sometimes participate in the psychology pool is we've come up with this standardized compensation scheme where basically it amounts to points per 20 minutes. So the way that it works is that if your project is online, if your experiment is being done online, and you want to use the SONA system, if you want to use the introductory psych pool, your compensation has to be equal to 3 points per 20-minute blocks. So if it's 15 minutes long, if the duration of your experiment is 15 minutes long, it's going to be worth 3 points. If it's 19 minutes long, it's going to be worth 3 points. If it's 20 minutes long, it's going to be worth 3 points. If it's 21 minutes long, it's then going to be worth 6 points. So it's done in like 3-point blocks, and it's done in 20-minute blocks. So however long your experiment is going to take, typically, half an hour would be worth 6 points. So it's 3 points for every 20 minutes for an online study. On the other hand, if you are using the SONA system and you're recruiting for face-to-face studies, so if they're actually meeting you in one of the psychology testing rooms and you're doing a face-to-face study, then that is worth more because it takes more effort on the subject's part in order to do that. So that's worth 6 points for every 20 minutes. So if you have a 45-minute experiment that you're running where the subject will take 45 minutes since the time that they show up to the door, read your subject information sheet, read the instructions, complete the task, and get debriefed. If that takes 45 minutes, then you're looking at 18 points, right? 6 for the first 20 minutes, 6 for the next 20 minutes, and then 6 for that final 5 minutes, because again, you do it in those 20-minute blocks. You're looking at 18 points. So you can use these, you should use these if you're going to be using the introductory psych pool. When they ask you, for your compensation rationale or why you're doing this much, you just say that this is the amounts that have been agreed upon by the psychology department, and that is pretty straightforward. All right, so use those compensations. If you want to offer other compensations, so typically what students will do is they will recruit subjects from quote-unquote family and friends, which literally means posting to a social media site, and we'll get to that in just a minute. Or they will use the SONA system to access the introductory psych students. Typically, the compensation that has been used in the past is this point structure for the SONA system psychology students, 0 for the family and friends recruitment. So bear that in mind. You can offer more for the family and friends. You cannot do more for the SONA subject. So this is for the introductory psych pool. You can't say, well, I'll give them 10 points for my 20-minute study. Can't do that. This is the baked-in compensation table. But you are allowed to compensate your family and friends subjects to an extra amount greater than 0. However, that goes into your IRB protocol, and if either I or Erica determine that it is too coercive, then we will let you know, and it will need to be changed. All right, so that's compensation. Let's take a look at this one here. All right, so hopefully you've taken a look at this already. So these are some, it showed up on my screen. All right, no, here we go. All right, so these are some standard stock answers, and not all of these answers will apply to you, so only use what you need. And these are, in addition to stock answers, just good stock ways of doing things. So one thing about the IRB protocol is that is the way that the method or the experiment was approved to be done. So you got to stick to that protocol as closely as possible. So if you put something in the protocol and say, I'm going to do things this way, make sure that you do things that way. So for using students, so when they ask you, to say, what's your subject pool? Why are you using this particular subject pool? These are the kind of stock answers that we have. Students are a convenient population and easily accessible since IU offers per credit to introductory psychology students to participate in research with appropriate alternatives. This is the most effective way to gain access to a large number of participants in a timely manner. You can copy and paste this as justification for using students. Okay, so don't feel that it's plagiarism to copy and paste any of this. Don't feel that you got to rephrase it. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. This is just your way of saying, all right, I know what the IRB expects, and I will do what they expect, and here's my basically agreement that I will do that. So the ones that I want to make sure that everybody is aware of in terms of recruitment. So again, there's two major ways that you can recruit. One is through SONA systems, and that's where you recruit the introductory psychology students. The other one is face-to-face, and that's where you go through basically social media. So these are recruitment methods for students, and you can use this in the how will students be recruited. And again, you can just copy it straight. Participants will be recruited online from IUSB introductory psychology classes. Through the psychology research management system, introductory students have given an electronic link to the sign-up site with their syllabus. My study alongside with other available studies will be listed on that site. Other alternatives for earning course credit in their syllabus. Participants will not be directly contacted for the study. A copy of the SONA website sign-up information for the study is attached. So this is your basic guide for how to recruit subjects from the SONA pool. We will have Professor Talcott coming into class next time to make sure that everybody can have that copy of the SONA system website. Because I want to be able to review the IRB protocols a little bit earlier, and because literally the copy of the SONA research sign-up information is going to be almost directly cut and paste from the IRB protocol. You're going to hand it in to me without the SONA system. So she's going to come in on Thursday. Your IRB protocol is due Wednesday by midnight. So you're going to hand it in without the SONA system sheet. But then before we send it off to Erica, we're going to need that SONA system sheet. So it's very simple. It'll take you all of 15 minutes to complete. But we do need to have Professor Talcott in here to let us know exactly how that's done. But this is your script for what you're going to be doing to introductory psychology students. Script for family and friends. So you can contact them via email. You can contact them via face-to-face. You can contact them via social media. So you don't have to use all three. You can, but basically those are the three ways that you can recruit family and friends. Now, family and friends just means other people. Other people that you have emails for, other people that follow you on your Twitter accounts or your Facebook accounts, or other people that you meet face-to-face. Yep.
So I'll be recruiting, I'm just going to do a Canadian sample for people that I know. Mm-hmm. But I know everyone's email, so I'll probably text them and say, hey, do you want to do this? Can you give me your email? But I have to say that I'm like reaching out to people via texting, or could I just consider that email if I'm emailing them the study information sheet and whatnot?
Well, I mean, you can modify this. So that's a good question. I didn't think about texting. It's so early 2000s. But anyways, yeah, this is so 1990s. But anyways, you can use this and just change email to text. And you can also, I mean, you could, if you are going to text them, just text them the complete sort of blurb rather than saying, I would like to, maybe you could participate in an experiment. If so, let me know, and then I'll send you the information. You can just send them the information if that works.
Okay. For some too, like if I see someone in person, ask them, can I just include in it people we reached out to via text in person?
Yes. So there is for email, their kind of standard protocol.
So you can have little sections in each way that you're recruiting.
Exactly, yeah. So for recruitment, you can say some subjects will be recruited by text, and then you would say, each, friends and family of the principal investigator will also be recruited. Each family member and friend will be approached individually by text using the following script, and we'll see the script in just a second. A text containing a link to the website where the survey is located will be sent to the individual, so you can modify this for however you're communicating with them. And you have contact by email, you have contact by social media, so friends and family of the principal investigator will also be recruited. A post will be made to my Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever account using the following script. The link to the website where the survey is located will be included in this posting. The individual may then choose when and where he or she would like to complete the survey. And then we also got one for FacetoFace, where it goes, family and friends of the principal investigator will also be recruited. Each family and friend member will be approached individually using the following script. If he or she agrees to participate, he or she will be handed a piece of paper or texted or whatever, however you would do it. And then they will use that to do, to visit the website at this time of their choosing.
And then the script that we're using, do we just include that right under that question? This one says describe how participants will be recruited.
Yes.
So then we just put it right under that question.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So the recruitment indicates how they're going to be contacted, and then also what you're going to say. And then those are the ones for the people using Qualtrics for doing online studies. There are very similar ones for face-to-face studies. So each individual family member will be approached using the following script. If he or she agrees, an appointment will be made at the time that is convenient for the subject. So this for face-to-face one, for pencil and paper, this is more for the recruiting face-to-face when you're doing a pencil and paper, a face-to-face experiment. But you can also modify any of the other ones using this. If he or she agrees, an appointment will be made at a time and place that is convenient for the subjects. The appointment will follow directly after the subject is approached with the following script. So you can, again, modify it by means of how you're going to be contacting the individual. And then you would include this script right here. So the script, it goes, I would like to invite you to participate in a research project that I am doing for my senior advanced lab class at IUSB. It is completely voluntary, and even if you start it, you can decide to withdraw at any time. The project concerns whatever your project is about. You do not have to give away the sort of causes of your project, especially if it's a sensitive issue, but they should know what in general is going to be asked of them. So if you are saying, oh, the project concerns racism, but you don't want to alert them to the fact that that's what you're measuring because you fear that it's going to change their responses, you can just say the project concerns attitudes and perception, the project concerns interpersonal relationships, the project concerns, something along those lines where it's what the project is concerning without revealing what the independent variable might be. So there's a difference between not giving them enough information or lying to them about what they will be doing in the project. That you don't want to do. So we'll be asking you about, it'll be about attitudes and perceptions. That's completely fine. They don't need to know that it's a study on racism and sexism because that might change their answer. But you need to tell them in general, we'll be asking you, about these kind of things without letting them know what the independent variable is. So your decision to participate is completely up to you. And this is the part where you might not have thought to include this, which is why we have these scripts. Your decision to participate is completely up to you and will not have an effect on either your or my relationship with the university. Also, your decision will not affect my grade in any way. And that's included there to make sure that they're not being coerced. So if you remember Erica, when she visited us, she said that coercion could take the form of if you went up to somebody and said, can you do my experiment? And they're like, no. And you're like, please, I need this. I'm going to fail. I got one more class. before I graduate, come on, just do this for me. They might have a hard time saying no. This is designed where they're, able to say no. So it's not going to affect my relationship or your relationship with the university. It's not even going to affect my grade. Do you have any questions? Does this sound like something you would like to do? If so, then please, and then describe the procedure for making an appointment or getting to Qualtrics. So that is your kind of general script, and you can use that for any of the contact features. So if you were going to contact them by email, this is what you put in the email, right? If you're going to contact them by text, this is what goes into the text. If you're going to contact them face-to-face, write this out for yourself, because even though it might seem a little stiff, this is what's approved. So if you're going to contact them face-to-face, you will go up to that person and say, if you would like to participate in a research project that I, practice it so it sounds a little bit more natural, but don't deviate from it, because again, if you deviate from it, you don't know if you're going to start adding stuff that's going to be coercive. Once this gets approved, this is your approved script. Make sure that you use what's been approved. Incidentally, let's say that, just as an aside here, let's make sure that we get everything the way that we want it first time through. If after you hand in your IRB protocol, even if it gets approved, if all of a sudden you realize something and you're like, oh no, I totally shouldn't do it that way, or oh no, I forgot to add this thing, you can do amendments to your IRB protocol. It just takes a little bit longer. So don't feel like once you hand in your IRB protocol, you are married to that IRB protocol forever. So for example, if you decide later on that you want to start using SONA, you can put in an amendment to your IRB protocol and still recruit your family and friends, but just amend it now so that it gets approved for SONA. But let's make sure that we're doing that first as much as possible. One moment. All right. You try to encourage yourself to check your emails more often by keeping that tab open, and then you get huge dings during the entire day. All right. Study procedures. Where is my thing here? All right. So for Qualtrics, this is your basic study procedure. So students will need to sign onto the SONA system and then click on the link to Qualtrics in my particular study. Step 1, initially a study information sheet will be provided for them to review. Once they have completely reviewed the information sheet and wish to continue in the study, they can choose to proceed with the survey. So in Qualtrics, this is basically saying your first page, when they click on that link, that first page that pops up should be your subject information sheet. If it's not, change your Qualtrics study so that it is. After reading the study information sheet, there will be a few demographic questions. It is always a good idea to ask your subjects for their gender and ask your subjects for their age, even if that has nothing to do with your experiment. So many APA journals want you to report in their subject characteristics the genders of your subject and the ages of your subjects, because it makes a difference if you are studying college-aged individuals versus elementary school students versus elderly people. It makes a difference if your subject is completely female or if your subjects might be completely male. That might be something that is an important thing to consider. So at the very least, I would recommend have a question where they can fill in their gender and have a question where they can, open-ended, where they can fill in their age. And we'll just collect those demographics. If you need additional demographics, that would be a good place to ask it as well. And then, for example, and this is what's going in your IRB. From here, they will fill out a survey on this, followed by the whatever survey. They will do this task, followed by this task. They will be randomly assigned. Half of the subjects will do this, half of the subjects will do this. whatever it is, the steps that you need to take. And then, if the survey I'm using is a modified version from a questionnaire by so-and-so, the reference to this survey is here. And then include descriptions of piping and randomization if needed, i.e. half of the subjects will go here, half of the subjects will go there. If they answered A to this question, they'll go over here. If they answered B to this question, they'll go over here. Just kind of a general indication of what the study will entail. And then this one here, so the data will be downloaded. What you're going to be doing with your data. The data will be downloaded from the Qualtrics website into an Excel file and saved to my password-protected hard drive. So make sure that you have a password-protected hard drive. This is what was approved before. This is good enough security for this type of data. So Qualtrics website into an Excel file and saved to my password-protected hard drive. If you're using another website besides Qualtrics, so I do know one student was doing a very kind of tricky JavaScript type question, and she found another survey site that can handle it. You can use those, put them in your IRB protocol. So if you're using something else, make sure that you put it in. They will get a link to this site, and then me and Erica will make the decision of, is that going to be sufficient? I will then transfer the data and analyze it in an SPSS data management program. Once again, saving the data on my password-protected hard drive. So you're going to download it off of Qualtrics into an Excel file. That Excel file is eventually going to go into an SPSS file in order to be analyzed. So make sure that you include that. Once the SPSS file has been formed, I will be uploading the data to the Canvas assignment tab for the advanced lab class and erase the data files from my password-protected hard drive. Only I and Professor Dr. Yudishvich will have access to my Canvas storage. So you will eventually have to share this data with myself. So include it on here, and you will do this by uploading it to the Canvas assignment tab. So make sure that you have that included here. And if you're looking at this and saying, you know what, I'm going to be uploading the data to the Canvas assignment tab for the advanced class, but I don't want to erase the data files from my password-protected hard drive, then put in, I will erase the data files from my password-protected hard drive after the course is completed. Or I will erase the data from my password-protected hard drive in 2 years after my master's program is completed. However long you want to hang on to that data, that's fine, but we just need some knowledge of that in order to make a determination. Is it going way beyond what you need, or is it, is it a good way to do these? All right, so that was for Qualtrics, kind of the step-by-step thing. So notice it has the steps of what are they going to be doing, and then also how the data is going to be handled. For face-to-face, so that was for Qualtrics. If you're doing face-to-face studies, once again, same thing. Prior to beginning a session with student subjects, print out a list of student names who have signed up to participate in that session. As the subjects arrive, I will quietly ask them their names and mark their presence on my list. Once the session has ended, I will immediately go to the psychology computer lab and award points to those students who showed up for the session. Once again, if you need to change this, right? If you don't think that you can immediately go after your sessions, if you know for a fact that you are going to be doing this between shifts at work and you got to run to work, just let them know within 24 hours. I will go to the psychology computer lab and award points to the students or I will sign into Sona and award points to the students that showed up. So it's not like this is locked in stone. This is what has been approved before. This is what the IRB has said. This is a good way of doing these things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to fit yourself into that. It's just kind of a guideline to kind of help you finalize your IRB protocols. Subjects will be run as individuals in groups no more of 10 people in one room. If groups of no more than 10 people, but each subject will be placed in a separate research cubicle. How are your subjects going to be run? So if you are running them in a group, let them know, groups of 5 or more, 6 or more. If they're going to be run individually, let them know. If you're going to be booking 5 students at a time, but they're all going to be in separate rooms. Again, just let the IRB know. Friends and family will be run as individuals in a place and a time that is convenient for them, but is also private. So again, just recommended procedures, recommended language. Subjects will be greeted and given the study information sheet to read. For student subjects run at IUSB, I will step outside of the room for about 3 minutes while the subjects read the study information sheet. So if you are wondering how much time do they need to read the study information sheet, or what should you do after you hand them that study information sheet, that's a nice procedure to have. 3 minutes is more than enough time for them to go through that. I will inform the subjects that will be just outside the door. If you have any questions, if the subject has a question, I can answer it in private right in front of the group. So again, modify this to what you are planning on doing. If the subjects agree to participate after they've read that sheet, they will be given a packet of the following surveys in this order: demographic information, and then you list each survey. The study should take approximately however many minutes to complete. And then after, this is one that we kind of developed again for face-to-face. It goes, after completing the surveys, friends and family subjects will place the surveys in an unmarked manila envelope, which they will seal. So this is a way of making sure that their privacy is protected. Student subjects will place their surveys in a box as they leave the room. If you want to use a manila folder for theirs as well, feel free. After turning in the surveys or at any time when they elect to end the study, I will thank them for their time and give them a post-study information sheet. I will enter the data into a computer SPSS file or an Excel file and an SPSS file from subjects in sets of at least 5 subjects at a time and save to my password-protected hard drive. So this is the one that I wanted you to be aware of. So it's not going to be very private, and it might be easily identifiable. If as soon as somebody finishes their survey, you take it and you're like, okay, let me see what you, oh, okay, all right. Oh, so that was you. All right, I know exactly who this is. So what we've developed is this kind of procedure where you get 5 surveys at a time. So as soon as you finish 5 surveys and you got those 5 surveys either in the box or in those manila envelopes, that's when you can open them up and basically say, all right, let me take a look at who this is, because there will be no names on the surveys, right? No identifiable information that's attached to those surveys. So this is just another way of saying, 5 subjects, that's enough to not be able to identify who did what answers. Blah, blah, blah. I may do more than 5 subjects, but never less. Once the SPSS file has been formed, uploading the data to Canvas assignment tab from my advanced lab class, and erase the data files from my hard drive. If, again, you don't want to do that, give them a date. And Dr. Udich will have access to my Canvas storage.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that should be something to include if you're not doing face-to-face about not checking? Because I remember when I did my survey for my lab, for P473.
Yep.
And when people told me they complete a survey, I would check and one would pop up, so I would know that it was them.
Was this an online survey?
Yeah, I was doing Qualtrics.
Okay.
So should that be something that I won't check it after I send? Do you know what I'm saying?
No, I do know what you're saying. Honestly, it's never been identified as an issue in Qualtrics. Oh, wow. I know what you mean, though, because I'm just realizing now that I do have the names of people that completed my experiment when I award them their grades. Mm-hmm. And I could, that day, go into Qualtrics and download the data.
Right. I remember I had one time when I did a convenience sample, obviously for P403, mm-hmm. and only one person that I knew of who was in a certain age group, like I had an older gentleman take it. Mm-hmm. He was the only one who took it. So he was the only one in that age group, so I knew exactly everything that he responded to.
Okay. So this is kind of like face-to-face recruiting, but using Qualtrics?
I guess, yeah. Okay. Messaging out.
Then I would put that in. That Qualtrics will not be, your data will not be downloaded. Because typically when we use Qualtrics, we recruit online. And that's one of the reasons why, like, I usually have no idea who's been doing my experiments outside of, they're in that SONA system.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, if you're recruiting, that's a good idea. If you're recruiting face to face, but you're doing it through Qualtrics, basically you're saying, can you do the study for me? Okay, here's the link or whatever. Yeah, put that in where you'll require 5 people, and when you sign into Qualtrics, it'll let you know how many people have just taken it. Mm-hmm.
So with the SONA system, will not know the names of the students that take it at all?
No, you will.
Okay.
So what happens in the SONA system, and Professor Talcott will let you know more about this, is they click on a link.
Okay.
And they can go to any experiment that has, a link on, for online ones, they can go to any experiment that has that link and complete it. What you get, though, is that you get that so-and-so signed up for your study, and then you have that decision to make of award them credit or don't award them credit. Now, that's signed up more for face-to-face interactions, because those are the ones where, you're like, well, they made an appointment at 10 and they didn't show up, so I guess I'll put do not award credit. For the online ones, though, basically, as soon as they click into your experiment, they show up on the SONA system. So typically for those ones, you click mark all as participated and award them their points.
Okay.
Yep. All right, risk benefit ratio. So in terms of risks, for most of you, there are no anticipated risks associated with this study. So if you are doing nothing more than looking at answering questions on a survey, looking at pictures on a computer, then there are no risks, right? So we're not electrocuting anybody. We're not, that's always my go-to risk one. We're not spinning people around until they get so dizzy that they might fall over, right? We're not doing those sort of things. So for most of you, there will be no anticipated risks associated with the study. If you think that there is a risk, then put it in your first IRB protocol that we're doing here and send it to me, and I will let you know whether it is a risk or it's not a risk. But basically, the way that you identify risks is, what does your typical student do in their day? And is what you're asking them to do anything different than that? So that's why surveys fall into that category, because I just had my students in my other class do an exam. That's part of their everyday experience. Is there risk associated with sitting down and filling in a Scantron sheet? Yeah, there's risk associated. You could push too hard on your pencil, the lead could pop up and hit you in the eye, right? Potential risk. But that's what you live with every single day. So for most of you, for the risk benefits, that will be your line. There are no anticipated risks associated with this study. For most of you, for the benefits, this will be your line. There's no direct benefits to participants in this study. So while it would be nice if they got some sort of benefit beyond the educational benefit of, finding out what psychology research is like, for most of us, there's no direct benefits to participants in this study. In some of the studies that I used to do, there were direct benefits to the participants in our study. So for example, in the color research experiments that we did, we could tell if a subject had color anomalies. We could tell if a subject was colorblind. We could tell if they were anomalous trichromats, which is the ones where you're not as colorblind as other people. You can kind of get away with it. You might not notice it until you get a professional diagnosis. We could do that professional diagnosis. We could take a look at their data and say, oh, this person's an anomalous trichromat, and that's a benefit, right? We could identify that for them. If you're ever doing a CAT scan, an experiment that requires a CAT scan or an fMRI, there's a potential benefit that they could identify tumors in your brain if you have one that you weren't aware of. So we're not doing anything like that. So there are no direct benefits to participants in our study. And then, since there are no anticipated risks to the participants, the anticipated benefits are reasonable in relation. Protection procedures, there are no anticipated risk. So there are no anticipated risks. Is a common topic of discussion for people in their daily lives. So again, modify this as you see fit. Some of this is a bit, some carryovers from before. All right, confidentiality. So if you're using paper surveys, they will be kept in a locked cabinet in my home that is only accessible by me, except during transporting it to and from that location or when I'm entering data at school. If you don't have a locked cabinet, don't say that you have a locked cabinet. If you're not going to keep it at home, don't say that you're going to keep it at home. But use a statement like this just to let them know where your paper and pencil surveys are going to be kept. At these times, it'll be in my book bag, which I'll keep on my person at all times. Data collected in Qualtrics will be downloaded computerized data files and will be kept on my password-protected hard drive until the SPSS file is complete, then it will be transferred. So again, just kind of stock answers in terms of how to handle confidentiality. There will be no identifiers in the data. So none of you are doing any sort of experiment where you need to know the names of the people that are and attach them to the data. So if you're doing face-to-face, that's where the list of participants for that day comes in, because you make your list of participants, and when they come in, you're like, what's your name? And they're like, oh, my name is John Smith. And you're like, okay, John Smith arrived. Here's your survey. And at no place on that survey will they have their name. And that ensures that nobody will be able to attach this survey with that particular identifier. So there will be no identifiers in the data. So that is going to be true of everyone. Only my professor, Dr. Udicevich, and I will have access to the Canvas assignment tab for the advanced lab class. Make sure that you include me in this, because I will at some point probably have a question about, can you help me analyze this in SPSS, or what's the stats that I should be doing with this data? There's some weirdness in my data. How can we deal with that? And I will have to look at your data. Make sure that I'm on this so that that has been approved. And then, again, suggested things. Paper surveys will be shredded 2 months after completion of the study. The computerized file in Qualtrics and Canvas will be erased 2 months after the completion. Blah, blah, blah. The data of any one individual will not be shared. Only aggregate results will be shared in a public poster session at the end of the semester and in a paper to my professor. In addition, I may submit the aggregate results to a journal for publication or a conference for presentation. So you are telling them, again, what's going to be shared. No individual data, aggregate data. If you're doing a case study, then say individual data will be shared, right? Again, we just need to know what it is that is going to be done. Compensation, we already talked about that. Make sure that you use the most recent one. I missed some of these. So make sure that you're using the most recent one. Definitely, if you see SurveyMonkey, it's an older version of it. But again, it's the same kind of procedures that have been used before. So that is, again, the stock answers. This was uploaded to Canvas. Use this again as you're finalizing your IRB protocols and you're making those final decisions. If you're like, I don't really know what to do here, I don't really know what to do here, or I don't know how to phrase it, again, you can use these stock answers to help you along. There's a question? Yep. Yep.
I was wondering what exactly it means by explain how subjects' personal privacy will be protected.
Personal privacy usually refers to privacy while they're doing the experiment. So if you are, this mostly applies to people doing it face-to-face. So the statement, if they're doing it online, then the kind of blanket statement for that is that they get to do it in a place and time of their choosing. So they can protect their own privacy. And if they're comfortable with doing it on, in the middle of, the IUSB campus, it's up to them. If they lock themselves in their closet, it's up to them. It's their choosing. During face-to-face ones, though, what you would typically say is that you'll leave the room and that they'll come and get you when they're done, right? So typically in face-to-face, for the subject information sheet, you hand it to them and you say, I'll give you 3 minutes. I'll be right outside the door. so that you're not like peering over them while they're doing it. And then when you do the survey, you hand it to them and you say, please read the instructions, do this. And then when you're done, you can come out and see me. Now, if it's a kind of interview thing where you will be with the subject, then you let them know and let them know that, I will be in the room asking the subjects questions, recording their responses, things like that. And that would also be in your subject information sheet. And, there have been tons of case study interview experiments and research done that has been approved by a wide variety of areas and institutions of the IRB board. So it's not here because it's not a sort of common research design. But again, for all of these IRB protocols, we do want to get as close as we can to a approved protocol as possible. But do not be surprised at all if a week after by a week Wednesday, you receive, feedback that says this needs to be changed and this needs to be changed and you're missing this information. Don't be surprised at all. I have yet to do an IRB protocol where I send it in and they're like, perfect, great. It's always clarify this, you missed this, what about this? Can you please provide us with this link? And sometimes you just forget things. So try to get it as close as you can, because the closer you can get it on that first run, the more chances it is that you'll get it through on the next one. So do your best. Use the kind of stock procedures, stock answers that we mentioned here to, as a guideline to kind of get you close. Modify them for your own situations, but then just be aware, be prepared that you might hand it in to me, and I'm going to try to turn these around as quick as I can, but it might not even go to Erica. So I'm going to be kind of like the first level, and if I see things that are like clearly need to be dealt with, I will make comments and send them back. If I, on the other hand, go through with my level of knowledge of the IRB procedures and then I say this is completely great, let's send it off to Erica, she's there to have a second pair of eyes, and also because that's her expertise. And she might say, no good, this needs to be changed. What do you mean by this? And then it'll come back and we'll just go through that procedure again. So it's going to take, I've never done the student project version of this IRB. So I don't know if some of these will go through the first time. I don't know if most of them will require a second time. But again, try to get it as close as you possibly can to what you think is the perfect procedure. And in that way, you optimize your chances for getting it through the first time. And if not, getting it through definitely the second time. Mm-hmm.
And then my second question was, since I'm doing an interview, do I just attach the interview protocol also to this and send it through Canvas?
Yes. So anybody that's doing face-to-face procedures, your materials will need to be attached in the file. So you can either send them as a separate file. So you can say, subjects will be handed this questionnaire, see, questionnaire document or whatever. Everything needs to come in because we need to just take a look at everything and make sure that there's nothing harmful potentially going on in any of those. For Qualtrics, it's a little bit easier. You can say, after this, they'll click on this link, and on that link, I'll have your entire study. So, but if you are doing face-to-face or Qualtrics, this applies for both, we need everything that is going to be done from beginning to end. So all the surveys, all the final questionnaires, the way that they're going to look, electronic files are fine if you're printing things out, but just send it to us so that we know what we're looking at and we know what we're approving. Mm-hmm.
Did you mention anything about conflicts of interest?
No, not today.
Okay.
Questions?
Could we just say that there's none? No?
Yeah.
Okay.
So your conflict of interest typically is whether or not you are going to be making any money off of this is usually what they're asking for with the conflict of interest. So if you're doing a study on, will refresh me, what's your study about?
Conformity and attitudes towards people who are LGBT.
Okay, so if the if Google contacted you and said, here's $50,000, we want to find out a way to market to the LGBT community, then you would have to say, oh, by the way, I'm getting paid $50,000 by Google for information about, marketing to the LGBT community, potential conflict of interest, something like that, because they just want to know, basically it's whether or not you're profiting in any way, whether or not you own stock in any of the companies that you're using, things like that. So unfortunately, for most of us, the answers are no, we're not profiting in any way. I can't wait until I'm invested in some, psychology measurement company. I can't wait until I have a stake in Qualtrics and I can click on that yes button and say, I own some of Qualtrics. So, but until that day, it's going to be all no's. All right. Any other? Yep.
As TAs, do we have issues? TAs for the interest class, do we have any issues?
Yes. So the policy for TAs, anybody that is in a position of power over students, will not be using their students in their experiments. So for your studies, you will be recruiting from the IUSB introductory psych pool, and then you will say, except for this section for which I'm a TA. And then when we set up SONA, when Professor Talkoff visits next time, and you set up SONA, you can actually click on sections to exclude. And those students, when they sign in, they won't even see your study. So if you're doing it, if you're recruiting through SONA, then you are protected in that way because they won't even see the link to your study. Mm-hmm. Any other questions? This is the we went over the stock IRB questions and those kind of answers. This is the remainder of class is just an open sort of question session. So does anybody else have issues, worries, stuff that they're struggling with on their IRB protocol? Mm-hmm.
About how much time will we have to actually do the experiment or whatever we have to do?
I would have to check the schedule for that. Let me see.
March 6th is when they said the results were due.
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about that right now. So results, let me see, methodology, snowpocalypse, no classes, statistics and data analysis. Okay, so we are going to go through statistics and data analysis. That might actually be a little bit early because we were pushed back a week, so we kind of got eaten up into a week. So in terms of, I usually have this duplicated. All right, so we're going to kind of, it looks like the way that most research works, we're going to play this a little bit by ear. However, once you know your methods, you know your statistics and data analysis. So next week we're going to start, hopefully, talking about the statistics and data analysis. Because again, once you know that subject's going to be randomized, it's going to be between this and within this, you already know the statistics that you're going to be doing. So we're going to go over a bit of that review, just so that you can start thinking about the stats that you're going to be doing. Writing the results section, this one we might have to push back a little bit, because I do want to have a chance for you to, at the very least, collect preliminary results. So we might push that one back a little bit. That might have been a little bit too lofty for our goals. We'll see how quickly the IRB turns around, because the one thing, though, that I do want to make sure is that we have time for getting these drafts in and getting these reviews in. So this is the first time I've done this kind of approach with an advanced lab section. So what we'll do is, again, I will try to get the IRB protocols turned around as quick as possible. We will go over kind of the statistics and data analysis next week, because again, you don't need data to know, to think about strategy about how to analyze data. That is dependent completely upon your design of your method section. But I might have to move that results section draft a little bit later than February 28th. But we'll see. I mean, if we can get here, the thing about subjects is that it's often we'll play that by ear. But the thing about subjects is that a lot of times it's feast and famine. So sometimes, you know, you finally get your protocol through, and in a week you got as many subjects as you need. Other times you get your protocol through, and it takes a month to get the subjects that you need. At the very least, though, we will be able to start to recruit subjects I'm hoping rather quickly. So again, I'm going to do my best to get these protocols turned around so that we can go on to the next step. But if we need to move the draft of the results, we'll do that. The draft of the methods, we won't have any need to move that, because once you have your IRB protocol set, your method section is basically already written. But yeah, we might have to, just kind of thinking about the date, move that a little bit, because while it would be completely acceptable to not have a complete set of subjects, right? So say that you wanted to run 50 subjects and you only have 15 subjects by this time. You can still write a draft of your results, because the general format of your results is going to be the same regardless of what your data is. But we do want to make sure that we have enough so that the general story is kind of there. So if need be, we'll move this section draft a little bit later. I'll think about that a little bit more, seeing how fast we can get these IRBs through and the approval from Erica. Mm-hmm.
How complete does our work need to be in order for us to apply for the undergraduate research conference and stuff?
That's a good question. Not totally complete, but you need to have your basic story kind of figured out.
But not necessarily like results.
No. So I've had students, and I've done it myself, where you have a little bit of your data collected, you take a look at it, it tells you a certain story, you write that up in an abstract, you submit it, and you continue to collect data until the undergraduate research conference. So we've done that on professional conferences, and it really is just kind of give you an insight into the inside workings of what some labs are like. I've worked in labs where a conference came up, so they have the call for papers, and our lab supervisor would basically say, what studies do we have that are completed that we could present at this conference? Let's write up an abstract, and we'll send in those completely completed studies. I've worked in another lab where the supervisor was the complete opposite, and he would say things like, do we have any data on anything we've started? Oh, we have 2 subjects run, let's write that up. Let's write up that abstract, and we'll present it at this conference. And then we basically worked until, because it's months in advance, so we would work until that conference date to do it. He would actually work until the day before And I remember him saying, oh, we have this one experiment paper we're going to present at the conference. Let's finish this experiment. I'm like, great, let's finish it. So we finished it. And it was like a month before the conference. And he's like, I think we got time for another experiment. Let's do that one. I was like, okay. So we work. We finished that one. It's about 2 weeks before the conference. I'm like, okay, great. The second one is done. It's like, great. Let's do another one. Let's do a third one. So we were literally working until the day of, and I held back the fourth experiment because I didn't want, to do any more. And that was just his style. And he would often tell us that he felt embarrassed if what was on his abstract was the same as what he was presenting, because that just means you did nothing since you handed in your abstract. So I've been on both sides of it. What we need in the for the abstract for the undergraduate research conference is basically you need an idea of where your story is going. You need some data, right? So we're not going to just make stuff up out of thin air for the abstract for the undergraduate research conference. But if you have 10 subjects by that time, that's fine. You can get an idea of what the story is. You submit it to the URC. They'll take a look at it, probably approve it for presentations. And if your story changes by the presentation, that's what science happens. You are under no obligation to present what you said in your abstract. Exactly. So that's a little bit of like the story behind the stories.
So is there a chance, so like let's say every single one of us in this class decides to apply to the undergraduate research conference?
I would hope so.
I would imagine they'd have a cutoff. So is there like a chance that they would select some but not others?
Well, they will select, the selection process for the undergraduate research conference is basically the quality of the research. So they will try to make an estimate from that paragraph that you sent in, whether or not it's a quality quality piece of research. Now, that being said, it is a conference that tries to promote undergraduate research as much as possible. So I have sent in a number of abstracts with a number of students to the undergraduate research conference. I actually hold the record for the most student presentations at IUSB, humble brag. But anyways, none of them have ever been rejected. Not one of them have been. And I've had ones where they've been done by the time the abstracts go in to they've been kind of done before the abstracts go in, and that's completely, they've still been approved. I serve on the committee for the URC as well, and I know for a fact that they want more students to participate. So there's no kind of upper limit for the number of students that can get in. They want, like, if they get 70, they want 90. If we're up to 90, we're hoping for 100. If we get to 100, we hope there's going to be 115, right? So it's not like other conferences where they're like, we can handle 100 people and that's it. Anybody that comes in over that can't go in. So we do everything that we can to make sure that students can present. And like I said, I've handed in more than anybody else, and I've yet to receive word where a student was like, oh, I got rejected by the URC. So from what I've seen so far, looking at some of the work in discussions, I think everybody here will be able to make it to the URC. I think everybody here has very interesting projects that people would be very interested in hearing about at the URC as well. So I think, that's one of the reasons why I kind of start so many classes with it, because again, it's really your biggest chance in this semester to kind of get your research out there. So we're going to have a research paper that I'm going to that we're going to try to turn into a publication in the journal that I founded and that I edit. Full disclosure, I don't have a huge circulation for that journal, right? It's there, it's online, it's available, but it's not like I'm getting millions of clicks on that. We're going to do a poster session, right? It's going to be out there in the hallway. Students will come by, faculty will come by, but nowhere near as many as are going to come by for the undergraduate research conference. So it really is just this great opportunity, this great experience to get your research out there and become part of this community. So definitely keep it in mind. And I can't remember. I think I had it up here. What the deadline is. Well, it's Friday, April 12th. That's the actual URC, but we'll have enough done by then, by the time that the abstracts are required for submission. Any other questions about IRB or other general advanced lab stuff? All right. Well, I know that the, just one last little thing that I'll mention. I know you got a deadline by midnight tomorrow, but I am going to try to, like I said, get through these as quick as I possibly can. I got a few meetings on Friday that is going to eat into that, into that time. But I saw one student had already submitted their IRB protocol. If you can get it in sometime on Wednesday, earlier in the day, I might have a chance to get a jump on it, get a look at it, and kind of like, move you down the line. So it is due tomorrow by midnight, but if you can get it in ahead of time, please do. I'm going to be looking throughout the day, trying to squeeze in where I can, getting these protocols turned around. All right, any other final questions about anything? We all good? All right, so that's it for today. So again, work on those protocols, get them finalized. Try to get them as perfect as you possibly can, but know that you might get feedback that says, change this, change that, and let's get this done, get this approved, and get these subjects tested.